150-meter vessel departs harbor at dawn, beginning a high-stakes journey into deep Atlantic waters.
Engines roar steadily as the massive longliner pushes farther from land into colder offshore currents. Weather stiffens while the crew readies for the demanding conditions of extreme offshore longline operations. The expedition targets a rare giant Atlantic bluefin tuna, a natural titan capable of immense speed and power.
Massive musculature and cold water endurance make the giant bluefin one of the ocean's most valuable predators.
Decades of experience guide the crew as their massive 150-meter longline vessel advances into deep Atlantic waters for giant bluefin runs.
Longline modules are checked carefully to ensure flawless performance during the upcoming high-tension battles. Thousands of meters of industrial longline are arranged precisely across the vessel's expansive working deck.
Heavy-duty cranes and tension arms are calibrated for the extreme loads a giant bluefin can generate. As evening settles over the open Atlantic, the longline crew completes final checks aboard the massive 150-meter vessel. The longline begins its deployment as the massive 150-meter vessel stretches across the open Atlantic, preparing for the search. Foamy streaks trail behind the massive 150-meter longline vessel as it pushes into deeper Atlantic waters.
Fishermen monitor line tension as the gear extends kilometers behind the massive vessel. Subtle shifts in the longline's tension spread across the surface as the massive vessel holds steady in the rolling Atlantic. A colossal bluefin silhouette rises suddenly, revealing the enormous power of this ocean heavyweight. The crew recalibrates their approach as shifting currents complicate the reading of line tension. Subtle changes in tension along the gear tell the crew a giant Atlantic bluefin tuna may be shadowing the longline below.
The giant Atlantic bluefin surges upward, its massive body breaking the surface in a powerful half-rise that reveals its full scale.
The longline shudders violently, forcing the fishermen to stabilize the support arms. Whitecaps form rapidly around the drifting gear, hinting at rapid movement below.
A massive bluefin appears again, its torpedo-like shape gliding with absolute precision.
The longline's shifting angle alerts the fishermen that the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna is testing the hook's limits beneath the surface. Violent twitches ripple down the tow line, signaling escalating engagement. The bluefin turns broadside, revealing its immense girth and metallic coloration.
The fishermen spread out along the rail, adjusting longline tension as subtle surface disturbances hint at activity below. As tension slowly builds along the gear, the crew senses the giant Atlantic bluefin beginning to test the longline from below. The giant bluefin rises again, its muscular tail scything through the water with commanding force.
The fishermen coordinate hauling positions to prepare for the battle ahead.
Swells build as energy transfers from the deep to the line.
The bluefin arcs near the hull, its full mass churning the surface in a powerful display.
The longline stiffens sharply, marking the moment the hunt transitions from tracking to full engagement.
The bluefin breaches the surface fully, revealing its monumental size and raw oceanic strength.
The first massive pull erupts through the longline, signaling the beginning of an intense confrontation.
Powerful surges from the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna drive through the longline, forcing the massive vessel's support arms to strain under the load.
The giant Atlantic bluefin tuna erupts skyward in a full-body breach, the tension longline snapping upward with its explosive force. The crew counters the sudden slack created after the breach, pulling to regain control of the line. Steep whitecaps form as the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna drives powerful surges beneath the surface, shaking the longline.
A brutal sideways surge from the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna forces the massive 150-meter longline vessel to adjust its heading.
Each powerful tailbeat from the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna sends sharp pulses up the longline, shaking the vessel's support arms.
Turbulence builds along the hull as the hooked giant Atlantic bluefin tuna circles tightly near the vessel, dragging the tension longline with it.
The fishermen coordinate synchronized pulls, slow gaining leverage over the giant tuna.
A long, grinding pull from the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna keeps the industrial longline locked under crushing strain. Heavy strain forces the fishermen to rotate positions to maintain endurance during the escalating struggle. Turbulent swirls build near the bow as the hooked giant Atlantic bluefin forces the massive vessel to hold steady.
The giant Atlantic bluefin tuna's dorsal fin slices the surface briefly before it disappears beneath the waves again.
Chaotic vibration runs along the longline as the hooked giant Atlantic bluefin drives another heavy surge beneath the surface. The vessel adjusts its heading to relieve drag as the giant Atlantic bluefin forces the longline into a hard port-side angle.
A massive pull forward indicates the tuna is accelerating for another desperate maneuver.
In a stunning burst of power, the giant Atlantic bluefin erupts into a full-body breach as the massive vessel strains against the longline.
As the giant Atlantic bluefin crashes back into the sea, its natural power sends a heavy shockwave across the surface.
Regaining control after the breach, the crew applies steady, coordinated pulls as the giant Atlantic bluefin settles back into a restrained surface run.
A sharp directional shift from the hooked giant Atlantic bluefin forces the longline into a sudden angle change alongside the vessel. The hooked giant Atlantic bluefin surges into a hard, straight run, driving the longline taut and dragging the pull along the vessel's side.
The giant Atlantic bluefin twists sharply under the surface, its natural form cutting through the churn as the longline strains to follow.
A sudden lift in the longline's tension ripples across the surface as the unseen giant bluefin strains upward beneath the hull. With each steady pull, the unseen giant Atlantic bluefin loses strength as the crew gradually regains control of the longline. A widening patch of turbulence signals the unseen giant bluefin rising closer to the surface as the longline tightens toward the hull. The bluefin's broad silhouette nears the surface, casting distorted shadows through the chop.
Foam spirals as the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna slows into wider circles near the longline. The fishermen seize the moment, pulling methodically to draw the giant closer.
Turbulent spray erupts as the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna thrashes violently at the surface in a final burst of resistance.
The deck crew tightens spacing to prepare for close-range control of the longline.
Churning geysers erupt as the fish rises almost fully into view.
The giant bluefin launches into a third full-body breach, showcasing relentless determination.
As the splash subsides, the line stiffens again, marking renewed contest.
The fishermen synchronize footwork along the rail, anticipating the next surface rise.
The tuna's immense form brushes the surface repeatedly as exhaustion grows.
Heavy resistance fades intermittently, enabling the crew to recover more line.
The vessel holds steady as the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna is worked carefully into the critical near-hull zone.
Violent tail strikes send towering splashes skyward as the tuna nears the gaffing range. The fishermen secure harness points, readying for the decisive pull.
As the tuna surfaces broadside, its sheer mass becomes unmistakably clear.
A final deep dive tests the limits of every component in the industrial longline system.
The crew counters a brutal surge from the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna, hauling in perfect rhythm to regain precious line.
Slowly, the tuna's massive body becomes fully visible beneath the roiling surface.
After a prolonged standoff, the fish begins tiring, its movements losing earlier ferocity.
More of the tuna's body breaks the surface as the struggle shifts toward retrieval. As the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna begins to tire, the longline settles into a steady rhythm across the rolling surface. The giant Atlantic bluefin lifts toward the surface as the tightening longline draws its upper body briefly into view beside the vessel.
The giant Atlantic bluefin nears the surface, its massive form shimmering just beneath the chop as the crew draws it closer to the hull.
With the giant bluefin now just below the surface, the crew positions themselves along the rail to guide it tightly toward the hull.
The giant Atlantic bluefin tuna thrashes violently at the surface, unleashing its remaining strength in a final burst of power.
The fishermen resist the shock, maintaining flawless control through practiced technique.
A violent burst of thrashing erupts as the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna unleashes one last desperate attempt to break free.
A firm rise in tension runs through the longline as the giant Atlantic bluefin makes a controlled upward push beneath the surface. In a final show of power, the giant Atlantic bluefin erupts fully from the water as the massive vessel holds steady against the surge. As the giant Atlantic bluefin splashes back into the water, the longline tightens again, and the crew moves quickly to regain steady control.
The tuna rises exhausted, allowing the predominantly Latino male crew to guide it into optimal lifting position. Levy-duty lifting straps are prepared as the final retrieval procedures begin.
The fishermen guide the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna alongside the hull, stabilizing its position for the upcoming lift.
The lifting arms engage slowly, raising the colossal big-eyed tuna toward the deck.
Spray falls away as the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna rises completely into the air, suspended securely by the vessel's industrial lifting arms.
The giant bluefin swings inward as the crew steadies the load with practiced precision.
The fish is lowered onto the steel deck, its immense body filling the workspace. A black male crew member and a
Cold mist rises from the massive giant Atlantic bluefin tuna as its enormous body rests across the steel deck.
The fishermen secure the catch with industrial straps to prevent dangerous shifting. Exhausted yet focused, the crew begins stabilizing the massive specimen for processing. The longline is cleared rapidly to prevent entanglement and prepare the deck for measurement.
The vessel steadies after the intense battle, gliding calmly across the Atlantic swells.
With the colossal bluefin finally secured on deck, the crew prepares to transition from battle to precise scientific verification.
With the battle over, the crew begins carefully rinsing the giant Atlantic bluefin tuna to clear seawater and debris before formal processing.
The crew inspects the giant Atlantic bluefin's fins for tears and impact marks, assessing how the long battle affected its massive body.
The fishermen carefully remove the embedded hook gear from the giant bluefin, ensuring no hardware remains before cold chain handling.
The crew carefully brushes away barnacles and sea growth from the giant bluefin, restoring a clean surface for later preservation steps.
The crew wipes down the massive catch with industrial cloths, removing residual seawater before protective cooling treatment.
A thin protective chill layer is applied evenly across the tuna's skin to preserve freshness during transport. The giant bluefin is positioned onto a reinforced pallet, securing it for the move to the vessel's ultra-cold storage hold.
The fishermen gather around the monumental catch, reflecting on the exhausting and triumphant battle.
Hard-earned pride sweeps across the deck as the crew stands beside one of the largest bluefin ever landed.
Laughter breaks the tension as the crew shares stories from the intense hours of struggle.
Even in celebration, the fishermen maintain disciplined professionalism while securing the massive prize.
The crew begins chilling the giant Atlantic bluefin with cold seawater to stabilize its temperature before deep freezing.
The giant bluefin is transferred into the vessel's deep freeze hold, where sub-zero temperatures lock in its premium quality.
At port, the frozen giant bluefin is lifted from the ship's hold and positioned into a refrigerated export container.
Once secured inside the container, the cargo is sealed under strict cold chain standards for transport. In a controlled kitchen environment, expert chefs begin preparing the frozen bluefin for precise, high-grade culinary cuts. Expert chefs finalize the presentation, turning the giant Atlantic bluefin into elegant dishes crafted with meticulous precision.